and welcome to this tutorial for NCF's Allen and Heath GLD 80. The purpose of this video is not to teach you everything about the board, but the purpose is to give you enough information to run it, whether it be on a Sunday morning service or Wednesday night class. We understand that not everything is going to be needed for, you don't need about EQing and stuff like that for just you need to play an iPod or something, but we want to just do it overall, and it's good information to know in case something does go haywire. So I hope you do enjoy it. To let you know, most of the inputs for the board are actually not behind the board itself. They're mostly up on the stage, and there are about four inputs on the back, but there are 48 inputs for the board that the board can take. So we're going to get started on how to learn and use this board right now by starting up the board. But actually, to start up this sound system, you don't want to start up the board first. Up on stage is the stage box, which has all the inputs, and the avion system, which is the in-ear system, which has to be turned on first. And that is on the left side of the stage, to the left of the projector screen as you're looking at the stage. And then the speakers are now powered, so they have a switch in the back that needs to be switched, and on the front of the speakers is the PreSonus logo that will light up in blue when they are on. So you have the two hanging speakers in the front and the two sub speakers in the middle floor. So once you have turned on everything on stage that needs to be turned on, what we're going to do is we're going to turn on the board by simply pressing the power button directly about the center of the far left side of the board, and it's a little switch, and you just flip it, and the board will immediately start powering up. Since the board is a digital board, everything is virtual in it, so a fader is going to change throughout the use of the board of what it represents. It takes about 30 seconds for the board to boot up, but once it's booted up, it is ready to go immediately. So once it boots up, we'll get started. Okay, as you can see now, the board has fully booted up. So up here in the top left corner, we have our audio adjustments for things like our EQing and preamp and gate. Down here is our input bank with our input faders and all that. And out over here on the right is our output fader bank. And then we have our touch screen. And we'll get into the details of what each one of these does here in a few minutes. So getting started, you might get a little confused when there are only 12 input faders when I said there are 48 inputs. Well, the reason for that is because this is a digital board, and it has two banks of 4 pages. So if you look right here, I've got layer A selected, and if I hit layer B, the faders slide into position. So you have to be careful with that, because an individual fader does not represent a input's position. Now, to tell that, there's a little button right here that says Alt View, and you press and hold that, and it will show you on the little screens for each individual fader the number of the input or output, and you release to go back to what the name of it is. And to let you know, these little screens that you see here are called scribble strips. The scribble strip will actually display multiple things. We've already seen, it will just show the input's name, input number, and it can show the gain or the pan. The gain can be adjusted using this knob via this, if you have it selected on the scribble strip, up or down, and the pan, likewise, you can go to the right or to the left extra, or just have it center. So we leave it on the gain because that's what we use it more. We don't adjust the pan. So talking about faders, we only have one layer of output faders, and so right here, if you look, we have 5 faders that are being used right now. On the far right in the red, main FOH is your main overall channel, front of house speakers. So that will control, if you mute that, everything but the monitors will be muted. Next to it we have the reverb. It's just verb right now because we don't have enough room on our scribble strip. But the verb is your reverb, and as you want more reverb, you adjust the level of that, and we'll get into how to adjust certain channels to have more reverb than other channels. Right here we also have delay. That is also same thing as the reverb. It's adjusted if you need more delay to be, if you need your delay to be louder or not. And those, all of our effects are in this white color. Okay, so moving on down to the left, these are mono 1 and mono 2. These are our monitors. Monitors or auxiliary outputs will be in yellow. They are used for adjusting the stage monitors for whoever's up on stage playing. So that covers our outputs. So let's move over here to our inputs, and I'm going to go left to right on those. Over here on the left, we have, in light blue, we have our drums. These green inputs are our musical instrument inputs and our other inputs such as iPod and computer. They should be labeled as whoever is using them or what they are. So starting on the second page, what we have in dark blue is our vocals, and those are labeled for who they are. And on the third page, we have our handhelds, our lavalier microphone for passenger us, and our PC and iPod inputs. So now we've talked about all these inputs and outputs. So what we're going to talk about now is the individual channels, what these buttons do. So right here we have our knob. We sort of covered it already. You've got your gain, your pan. So if I hit pan right here, that'll allow me to change what this knob does. And if I go back to gain, it'll allow me to adjust the gain. So right below it we have our levels for that channel. Then we've got our mute button. If it's red, then it's muted. If it's not lit up or red, then it's not muted. Then we have our select button and our mix button. Those two buttons we'll get into here in a couple minutes. But going on down, we have our PAFL button, which allows us to, using the headphone jack, allows us to hear one individual channel if you're needing to single out one single channel for EQing or something like that. If you got a certain high note or something that you just need to figure out what it is, you can just hit that button. And then you've got your fader down here. Now one thing to notice on the scribble strip is when I adjust a fader level, the scribble strip will change from the name to the level of the fader. So if I move the fader up to 0, it will display 0, and then it will go back to the name once I've stopped moving the fader. So that's a little bit better for fine-tuning it, just getting it right in there. So now we're going to talk about the select button. This is where it gets a little bit more complicated, but once you learn it, it's fairly easy to work. So I'm going to go down here to our iPod channel so we can play with it. And the select button is right above the mix button and below the mute button. So if I hit the select button, our touchscreen changes from what it was, and up in this upper left corner, this set of buttons and knobs lights up. So the select button allows you to work on an individual channel. So looking at this section of the board, you've got smaller sections. We've got a preamp section, a high pass filter, your gate, your parametric EQ, and your compressor. And you have a button that says in and one that says select, except for on your preamp, which does not have an in because it's always on. What the in button does is it turns on that adjustment. So if I hit the in button, whatever adjustments I do with the EQ will be heard. What the select button does, it does something a little different. For each area of adjustment, it has a menu on the touchscreen. And if I hit, like for the gate, if I hit select, it will bring up the menu for the gate. If I hit the compressor select button, it will bring up the one for the compressor. So you can do that and you don't have to touch the touchscreen at all. Now, if you're used to an analog board, you may be wondering where are your individual channel adjustments are. Well, that is simply, you're able to access it by hitting the select key and, like I said, bringing up this menu of your adjustments. Now your screen will switch over to your adjustment screen under processing, and if I go, let's do EQing. So let's say I need to EQ the iPod channel, which I have selected. Right now, this channel has no EQ adjustments on it at all. So what I want to do is I want to maybe bring down the lows a little bit, and bring up the highs a little bit. So what I can do is, there are little circles here on the screen, and each of those circles is an adjustment point. So what I can do is I can, on this far left, I'm going to be adjusting this green circle. I can move it to the right or left, up or down. So here we have several different adjustments for the different type of fade. So you can you're going to have to play around with it a little bit to see what best fits the need for the sound that you're needing to get. So I'm going to do this pointed one right here. So like I said, you've got up and down on this lower knob, and then on this upper knob you can go right and left. Now these two knobs give you actually three types of adjustment. You may be wondering how. Well, your bottom knob is, like I said, it's just right and left, which controls up and down. This top knob controls right and left, but if you press down and you turn right or left, you can control the Q value for the band of frequencies that you're controlling. So I can do this up and down to the right, and then I can, if I need to get like my high mids or something, I can move this blue one right here. Maybe a little hard to see, but I can then adjust it if I need to take out a lot of them. And then I said I wanted to take down my, there we go. So that's I mean, that may sound absolutely horrible in real life for what that channel is being used for, but you may need it for something. So that you're going to have to play around with it, and it's very easy to do. In addition to the knobs, you can use your finger on the touch screen and adjust it. So if you look here, we just talked about the parametric EQ. So right here we have our compressor, our preamp, our high pass filter, and our gate. So let's talk about the compressor. The compressor takes out the loud, hard sounds. So let's say Michael hits the drums really hard, or whoever's playing the drums hits the drums really hard, and otherwise it would blow out your speakers and your sound system, and you'd have to buy a new sound system, and that would be a big ordeal that we don't want to go into. Basically what the compressor does is it cuts off and brings down those sounds to a more reasonable level. But the problem with using the compressor is that you can start to lose data when you start to use it too much, or you get set the wrong way. So be careful with it. But do some research and learn about how to use it properly, because it can be a great sound tool and can make it sound a whole lot better rather than making it sound worse. We'll move over here to the gate right after the compressor, because the gate sort of does the same thing in some ways, except for it does the exact opposite. The gate, basically, if you think about it as an actual gate, it allows the louder sounds through, and then shuts it off so that it doesn't allow the softer sounds to get through. So let's say it's very good for, again, drums, that if Michael hits the drums, your mic for your bass drum doesn't pick up on your cymbals. So it basically takes out a lot of the background extraneous stuff, and can focus in right on what instrument that microphone is listening to. Again, same thing with the compressor. Can be a great tool, but you have to be very careful with it, because again, you can be losing data that really needs to be there to make it sound good. So moving on, you have your preamp, which is your gain, not to be confused with your gate, which basically that allows you to digitally bring up the volume. You want to leave it about halfway. That's usually what channel is good for a channel. If you start turning it up too loud, you can start getting electrical interference from the microphone picking up stuff that is being really brought up and it sounds bad. And so you can get squealing if you get too high or stuff like that. So again, be careful, but it's really good and helpful to have. Your high pass filter, what it does is it allows you to bring down your low frequencies that maybe a low rumble or something like that. So that shows up on your EQ page when you adjust it. So that covers all of this section of the board when you have something selected. So now we're going to move on to the touch screen. Again, a little bit more advanced, but it'll be fine. Right here on the right side of the touch screen, you have several buttons. Processing, which if you select something, that if you leave it on processing, it'll show up the menu for that. You've got meters, so you can see all of your meters for all your channels at once. Your FX is basically as a virtual effects rack. Your reverb, your delay for each channel. Right here you have your I/O, which is input and output, which basically shows you where your channel is actually on the stage box where it plugs into. So that's really helpful if you're in a frenzy and you need to figure out exactly where it's plugged into. You have your scenes, scenes are basically settings that you can save so that you can recall a scene. And for a Sunday service, the settings and the EQing for Sunday is already saved in here, so you shouldn't have to worry about this, and you should be able to use it for whatever purpose you need to. So you shouldn't be needing to go into that menu very much. You have your ganging and your general setup, like your date and time and great stuff like that. So under the processing layer, we have our main home screen that shows up when the board gets booted up. We have our users, which you can have multiple users for the board. A quick start, just if you need help getting started for some reason, or you are teaching someone, you can go there and you can scroll through it and look at that. And then you've got this help layer, which shows you general help stuff if you need. That's basically a different version of the user's manual. And then you got your different languages. So that's that. Then we'll go down to meters. Your meters allow you to see everything. That can be a good way to leave it if you're mixing on a Sunday morning service, to just see if something's peaking or not. You've got your levels for your FX if something's peaking there, and your mix, your output, what those levels are. We already talked about a little bit about the FX rack. You shouldn't need to adjust this FX part directly because it's set up pretty well. So that should stay like that. Your in and out, your I/O, you've got your D-Snake or digital snake. This shows what is coming in and out of the stage box on stage. You've got your I/O port in and your I/O port out. You've got your monitor. This shows you and allows you to label what is going into the in-ears. So this is how the Avion system ties into the board. Like I said earlier, you cannot control individual levels through the board, but that's entirely done through their control panel on stage for each individual singer. So going down to scenes, we already talked about scenes. You got your scene manager, which lists all the scenes that are saved in the board, and there are hundreds of them that you can save. There's a cue list editor, so if you have multiple scenes you want to queue up during a evening service or Christmas play or something. Next, we have our ganging, and then our setup. Now our setup, I said, we've got a general overall, date and time, but we also have our USB recording here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a USB drive. Doesn't matter which slot I put it in. And it'll take it a second to recognize it fully. And once it recognizes it, it'll show me right here how much space I have on my USB drive, so I know if I can record a lot on it or whether I'm going to start recording and it's immediately going to shut off and I'm going to miss all of Pastor Russ's sermon, which wouldn't be good. So if I did want to start recording, all I would have to do is hit this record button right here next to where it says USB space, and that would start it recording. Since I don't want to record, I'm not going to hit that button, but when you're done, you can hit the stop button and just unplug the USB flash drive. That's all you have to do. Also, in addition, in the bottom right corner, on all the screens is this little question mark, and what the question mark does is if you hit it, it brings up a help page about that specific area that you're working with. So right now I'm in the USB section of the board on the touchscreen, and it brings up, when I hit it, it brings up the help section for USB audio. You can scroll through it, and when you're done, you can just hit back on the question mark. If I go to FX and I hit the question mark, it'll bring up help for even that specific FX I'm working on. I was working on the 2-tap delay, and it pulled it up for the 2-tap help for the 2-tap delay. So it's a very helpful tool that if you just get lost or you just need a little bit of help, that's right there, always available. All right, one more thing to take a look at in the top right corner of the board is this knob. So let's take a quick look at it. So I'm going to go down here to my iPod channel, select it, and I'm going to go to my compressor, and there's some values on here on this compressor page that may need to be adjusted that don't have a knob over here on the top left part of the board for. So how do I adjust that? You can't enter in a number by doing your fingers, so let me show you. So I've got this value over here, and if I tap on the value, it lights up in yellow. So I've selected that value that I want to adjust. And I can use the knob to go right or left, so up or down with that value. And then once I've adjusted the value to the point I want it at, I can just tap off to deselect it. And any value that is in the board on the touchscreen that you see that has that little box, you can tap on it and adjust it using the knob. So let's take one other quick look at another example. So here's my 2-tap delay. I've got these, it has these virtual knobs like a sound effects rack would have in real life, but again, I can't turn it because it's a touchscreen. So let's say my slope of my feedback filter for my 2-tap delay, I can turn it up or down, or up and down, I should say, and then I can tap on it again to deselect it. So that works with any value like that that can be tapped like that to be adjusted. So that's a really useful tool. Okay, now if we look over here on the right side of the board are what we call soft keys. They say soft 1 through 10 on them. Right now they're not being used for anything except for soft 10. Soft 10 is being used for the 2-tap delay. The 2-tap delay, let's say I'm playing a piece of music. What I will do is I will, with each beat of the, not super fast, but each slow beat, when I hit a beat with the music, I hit the soft key. And it will match, after I do it a couple times, it will start blinking to the rate that I was tapping at. So that's helpful for adjusting your delay to be more accurate to your music. So now we're going to talk about mix buttons. Mix buttons allow you to select a group so that you can control whatever is going into that group. Let me show you for what I'm talking about. So right now, the way the board is and the way you'll mostly be using it, the mix button will be selected for the main FOH, front of house. So that way you're controlling whatever's going to those speakers. But let's say I want to have more reverb on my singers rather than my instruments. Well, how do I do that? What you do is you hit the mix button for reverb. And what that will do is it'll automatically make the sliders show how much of that specific channel is being fed into the reverb. Okay, so let's say I said I wanted to feed more of the vocals in. So right now I've got all of my vocals are turned up in the reverb compared to my instruments, which have none at all. So that basically, and I can do the same thing for my delay. Same thing, only my vocals have the delay on them. But you're not going to just use it for effects, you're going to use it also for your monitor mix. So you might have that one person who's using the monitor highest in that mix, but may have everyone else at a lower volume. So that's what the mix buttons do. You want to usually, for the monitors, do your monitors first and then have those up before you adjust your main front of house system. That way you don't get it too loud overall. So that's what that does. And you want, like I said, you want to leave it on the main front of house as a general rule. So that basically is what the mix buttons do. Okay, so the last thing that you need to know is how to power down the board. The board is always the last thing on and the last thing off. So once you've powered off your speakers up front, then what you're going to want to do is go to your main processing screen with nothing selected, and it'll give you an option right above the clock for power down. You'll hit it and it says shut down the desk, continue, and you want to hit yes. Give it a second and it'll say it is now safe to power off your GLD. The same switch as you flipped it on, you turned it on with, you flip that and the board shuts down, and that's all there is to it. Alright, thank you very much for joining us with this tutorial. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and watch this video. I know it's a lot to take in, and we're not expecting you to know everything by just watching this video. But we encourage you to get hands-on time with this board. It's a great board and it's very powerful, and hopefully we can bring more people to Christ being able to use the tools that He's given us in our church. So I hope you have enjoyed this and it's been informative. Please don't hesitate to ask us any questions, and I hope you have a good time learning the rest of the features of this board. And have a nice day. Thank you very much.